The reservation was for 7 o'clock. By 7:30, Natalie Chen had already drained her second glass of wine and was seriously considering ordering a third. The elegant restaurant hummed with conversation and clinking silverware around her, but at her carefully set table for two, there was only silence and an empty chair mocking her from across the candlelit space. She'd worn her best dress, the midnight blue one that made her feel powerful and elegant, and had actually left the office on time for once, a minor miracle for the CEO of a tech startup that demanded every waking hour. Now she felt like a fool. This blind date had been her assistant's idea. "You need a life outside the boardroom," Maya had insisted, her eyes full of that concerned look Natalie had been seeing more often lately. "When was the last time you went on an actual date?" Natalie couldn't remember, which had been answer enough. So she'd agreed, somewhat reluctantly, to meet Maya's cousin's friend, a widower, apparently, someone who understood the complications of a demanding life. The profile had been promising, intelligent, kind, dedicated to his work as a pediatric surgeon. But promising profiles meant nothing when the person didn't even show up. Natalie pulled out her phone, ready to call for her car, when she heard it, a small, breathless voice that cut through the restaurant's ambient noise like a bell. "Excuse me, are you Miss Natalie?" She looked up to find two identical little girls standing beside her table, both around 6 years old, with dark curls escaping from matching ponytails and eyes wide with a mixture of nervousness and determination. They wore similar dresses, one in pink and one in lavender, both slightly rumpled as if they'd been running. Behind them, the hostess stood with an expression of bewildered apology. Yes, Natalie said, her irritation momentarily displaced by confusion. The girl in pink stepped forward, clutching a small stuffed rabbit. "My daddy's sorry he's late," she announced with the gravity of someone delivering a crucial message. "He had to do emergency surgery on a little boy who got really hurt, and he tried to call but his phone died, and he asked us to come tell you he's still coming and please don't leave." The girl in lavender nodded vigorously. "He's been looking forward to meeting you all week. He even bought new shoes." She said this last part as if it were irrefutable evidence of her father's sincerity. Natalie blinked, her anger dissolving into something she couldn't quite name. "He sent you two here alone." "Not alone," Pink Dress said proudly. "Mrs. Rodriguez brought us. She's our neighbor. She's parking the car. And we know what to do in restaurants," Lavender Dress added. "We have very good manners." Despite herself, Natalie felt a smile tugging at her lips. "I can see that. What are your names?" "I'm Emma," said Pink Dress, "and this is Lily. We're twins, but not the identical kind because we don't look exactly the same, even though people think we do. I have a freckle on my nose and Emma doesn't," Lily explained, pointing to the tiny mark. "That's how you tell us apart." An older woman with kind eyes and graying hair appeared, slightly out of breath. "I'm so sorry," she said to Natalie. The girls insisted this was an emergency, and honestly, I've never seen Drive Mitchell so anxious about anything that wasn't medical. When his phone died at the hospital, he called me in a panic. The surgery was urgent, a 7-year-old hit by a car. He couldn't just leave. Natalie felt something shift in her chest. She'd spent the last hour building a narrative of carelessness and disrespect, constructing walls around her disappointment. But looking at these two earnest little faces, at the neighbor who'd driven across town to deliver a message, she saw something else entirely. A man who saved children's lives and somehow was raising two daughters who cared enough about his happiness to embark on this mission. "Would you like to sit down?" Natalie found herself asking. "All of you. We might as well make use of this table." Emma's face lit up like sunrise. "Really? We can wait with you." "I think that would be nice," Natalie said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled gratefully and helped the girls into chairs. A waiter appeared, looking somewhat confused by the unexpected party expansion, and Natalie ordered juice for the twins and coffee for Mrs. Rodriguez. The girls sat on the edges of their seats, legs swinging, radiating an energy that somehow filled the empty spaces at the table. "So," Natalie said, "tell me about your daddy." What followed was a cascade of information delivered with the unselfconscious enthusiasm of children who adored their father. He made funny-shaped pancakes on Sundays. He was terrible at braiding hair but tried anyway. He read them stories every night in different voices for each character. He'd taught them the constellations and how to ride bikes and that it was okay to be scared sometimes as long as you were brave anyway. Our mommy died when we were babies, Lily said matter-of-factly, though Natalie caught the shadow that crossed her small face. We don't remember her, but Daddy says she would be proud of us. He works a lot, Emma added, because he has to save people. But he always comes to our school things, even if he's really tired. Once he came straight from the hospital still wearing his scrubs because he didn't want to miss my presentation about butterflies. Natalie felt her throat tighten. She knew about sacrifice, about choosing work over everything else. But she'd never had anyone depending on her the way these girls depended on their father. She'd never had to balance saving lives with braiding hair and making funny-shaped pancakes. He's been really nervous about tonight, Lily confided, leaning forward conspiratorially. He tried on like 5 different shirts. 6, Emma corrected. I counted. They were deep in a story about their father's disastrous attempt to bake a birthday cake when Natalie saw him. A tall man in a button-down shirt and slacks, nice ones, but wrinkled now, as if he'd been wearing them for too many hours, stood at the entrance to the restaurant, scanning the room with an expression of desperate hope. His hair was slightly disheveled, and there was an exhaustion around his eyes that spoke of too many long shifts, but when he spotted their table, his face transformed with relief. The girls saw him at the same moment. Daddy! They shrieked in unison, scrambling from their chairs and running across the restaurant with complete disregard for proper indoor etiquette. He caught them both, one in each arm, and buried his face in their curls for a moment before looking up at Natalie with an expression of profound apology. She stood as he approached, the girls clinging to his hands. I am so incredibly sorry, he said, words tumbling out. There was a boy, a hit and run, and I couldn't just, my phone died and he stopped, taking a breath. I'm sorry. I'm David Mitchell, and I'm apparently terrible at first impressions. Natalie looked at him, this exhausted man who'd spent his evening saving a child's life, who'd sent his daughters on a mission rather than give up, who wore the weight of responsibility and love so visibly, and felt something crack open inside her. All those hours in boardrooms, all those nights alone in her apartment, all her success and ambition suddenly seemed like just part of a picture. Not the whole thing. Actually, she said, her smile genuine and warm, your daughter's already made an excellent impression on your behalf. And I think emergency surgery on a hit-and-run victim is probably the only acceptable excuse for being late. I'm Natalie Chen. His shoulders dropped with relief. Thank you for staying. For waiting. Daddy, we told her about the pancakes, Emma interrupted, and the time you came to school in your scrubs, and how you tried on 6 shirts. David's face flushed. Did you? Well, that's thorough. They're excellent ambassadors, Natalie said, laughing at his embarrassment. Why don't you sit down? You look like you could use some food. Mrs. Rodriguez excused herself with a knowing smile, and David sank into the chair across from Natalie, his daughters flanking him like small, protective guards. The waiter returned, and they ordered food for David, dessert for the girls because, as Natalie insisted, exceptional diplomacy deserved to be rewarded. As the evening unfolded, Natalie found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. The conversation flowed easily, interrupted frequently by the girls' commentary and observations. David talked about his work with genuine passion but also with humility, about the weight of holding lives in your hands and the privilege of helping people on their worst days. Natalie shared her own journey, the startup she'd built from nothing, the challenges of being a woman in tech, the strange loneliness of success. I think I forgot how to have a life outside work, she admitted at one point. Everything became about the next meeting, the next milestone. It's like I looked up one day and realized I'd built this incredible career but forgotten to build anything else. David nodded slowly. After my wife died, work became my refuge. It was easier to focus on solving problems I could actually solve than to sit with grief. But these two, he squeezed his daughter's hands, they taught me that success without people to share it with is just hollow. They made me remember what matters. Emma leaned against her father's arm, eyes drooping despite the sugar from her chocolate cake. We matter, she said sleepily. You matter most, David confirmed, kissing the top of her head. Natalie watched this moment of tenderness and felt something shift irrevocably in her understanding of what she wanted from life. She'd spent years building walls, convincing herself that ambition and independence were enough, that needing people was a weakness. But looking at this small, imperfect family, a father juggling impossible responsibilities, two girls who'd braved a restaurant alone to protect their father's happiness, she saw a different kind of strength, one she'd been missing. When they finally left the restaurant, well past the girls' bedtime, David walked Natalie to her car. The twins were half asleep, each holding one of their father's hands. "I'd like to see you again," he said quietly. "If you're willing to risk another evening with us. Maybe one with less emergency surgery and impromptu child ambassadors." Natalie smiled, surprising herself by reaching out to squeeze his hand. "Actually, I think tonight was perfect. Your daughters are pretty convincing advocates. And any man who sends his 6-year-olds on a diplomatic mission rather than give up on something that matters to him, that's someone I'd like to know better. Even though I was 90 minutes late. Especially because of why you were late," she said softly. "You were saving someone's child. Some other parents, Emma and Lily. That matters." As she drove home that night, Natalie realized that sometimes the most important meetings aren't the ones we plan in boardrooms or mark on calendars. Sometimes, they're the ones that start with empty chairs and end with understanding that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with, that the best things in life are often messy and complicated and perfectly imperfect. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best partnerships begin when two little girls in rumpled dresses walk into a restaurant and change everything.